So look at a couple pictures here that relate to the female cycle. There's a lot of parts to a female cycle. The female cycle is commonly referred to as a monthly cycle because it's regulated by what kind of hormones? Steroids, right? However, there are also non-steroids like luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Steroids such as estrogen and progesterone play a role in this. We'll see these hormones on another picture in just a second. The first thing I want to clue you into or have you look at is right here. This represents the thickness of the lining of the uterus, the endometrial lining. Notice they're showing us blood vessels and glandular tissue. That's because it's the lining. Here it's the thickest, and here it's the thinnest. Notice it never completely disappears, right? Always keeps some of it. You will notice here days. A typical, quote, normal female cycle is how many days? 28 days. Please, by a show of hands, without hormonal supplementation, birth control, how many women in here have a normal 28-day cycle? Okay, so in a class of over 20 women, 2. Yeah. You guys just became markers for jealousy because, everyone wants. No, you don't want? What do you want? Wow, that's interesting. I have a slide called amenorrhea. Yeah, exactly. Right on. When the lining's the thickest, well, that's right before it's about to get shed. Day 1 of your female cycle is when your period starts. How long does the period last? Does it depend on who you are? Does it vary from person to person at different times in their lives? Yeah. Can it be as short as a day? Sure it can. That's not very typical, but it could be. Could it be 3 days, 4 days? That's more the average, around 4 days. Could it be as long as 7? Anyone happen to have 7-day periods and want to share that with us? Yeah. Thank you very much. No, it's just that we forget about this, that we're all people. Most of us aren't average, normal, typical. We're all somewhere along the chain, and we men don't have this cycle. We have different cycles. Motorcycles and bicycles and all that crazy stuff. Look, if a woman has a normal, typical, traditional 28-day cycle, odds are she ovulates on day 14. That is the 14th day after the onset of menses. You start bleeding, that's day 1. Day 14, you probably ovulate. That's no guarantee. That's a probably. Let's look at the other chart. Notice, they're not showing us days here because, well, in our textbook, they're all on one page. And you can see the days down below and go right up. And what you will notice is there's a dramatic spike in especially one hormone on day 14. Want to guess? LH. Luteinizing hormone is the hormone that stimulates ovulation. Does it get help? Sure, it gets help. Those other hormones help LH levels rise. However, it is LH that causes ovulation. Do you know what happens on the day you ovulate? Usually your temperature goes up about 1 degree. So if you're a woman, if you have a normal 28-day cycle, wouldn't be a bad idea to chart your cycle for a while. If you don't have a normal 28-day cycle, still chart your cycle. What you may notice, if you have a 30-day cycle, it might be fairly regular. It may not. So you'll take your temperature in the morning and in the afternoon for, let's say, a whole year you're going to do that. You're going to be regular and you're going to do that. Wow, that's a lot of work. Some people would do it. And on the day that you ovulate, you'll see that little spike in temperature. It is also common for women to have a pain on one side or the other. Hey, Judith, you know what that's called? Middle schmerz pain. Did I happen to talk about it in the lab? I don't remember. It's called middle schmerz. Wow, Mittleschermerz. I never ask anybody to spell that. I don't even know if I just spelled it right. The point is, a lot of women, a week and a half after their period ends, a week after their period ends, they get a pain on one side. And they never associate it back to this because it's in the middle of their cycle. And when the ovulation occurs, when the oocyte is ejected, that's an inflammatory process. That's happening only on one ovary typically, and it could create pain. It could create inflammation and swelling. So you might feel it just inside the hip bones on either side. How many people have that? How many people have that and just now learned what it was? Lots of people through the years figured out, oh my goodness, I have that. I had no clue what that was until now. By taking AMP class, it's pretty cool when you find stuff like that out. Notice this, progesterone. Do you know one of its major functions? Maintain thickness of the uterine lining. Look at the picture here again. The lining gets thickest when progesterone levels are the highest. Granted, estrogen levels have also gone up. But then they do that funny little curve. I'm not going to make you draw these curves. I just want you to understand what's behind them. Notice progesterone levels are low throughout the first 2 weeks, and then it starts to rise. Why is that? Because, you see this? What's this? Okay, in the center is the oocyte. What's this whole thing? It's a follicle. They're saying primary. So tell me what kind of epithelium? Cuboidal. What would be over here that they're not even showing us or giving us the option for? A primordial that would be squamous, correct? That's the most immature. So it grows into a primary, secondary, vesicular. Look here. As ovulation occurs, this would be the follicle. Do you agree with that? Follicle, follicle, follicle. The remnants of the follicle become a structure known as the corpus luteum. That is what produces progesterone. That is why you see progesterone levels rise after ovulation, because it's produced by the corpus luteum, which becomes present after ovulation. Do you remember from our talks earlier in this semester, where does estrogen come from? But where? Because all this is the ovarian cycle. It comes from the follicle. Estrogen is produced by the follicle. Look here. Oh, yeah. Look at it rise as the follicle keeps growing. Then it takes a drop off when it turns into the corpus luteum, and then the corpus luteum kicks in and starts to produce a little bit more. There's a little rise in estrogen. How would you describe this? Levels fall. Is that as dramatic as the LH spike? No. Notice these levels of progesterone rise and fall over about 2 weeks. Why? They're what kind of hormone? Steroids. LH rise and fall rather quickly. It is the drop in progesterone mainly that leads to what? The drop in progesterone, if progesterone maintained a thick lining, what would the drop in progesterone do? Stimulate bleeding. It would slough off the lining. It's the drop in progesterone, mostly estrogen as well, but we kind of tag this to progesterone, that causes the woman to have her period. The drop in progesterone allows the lining to thin out. That's what your period is. Yes, the most important of the words. Notice the first 4 letters spell. Amenorrhea. Do you know what amenorrhea is? It's when there is a temporary cessation of your periods, meaning a temporary break where you don't have it for a while. If it's permanent, what do you call it? You call it menopause when it's permanent. What kinds of things can cause amenorrhea? Okay, so hormones, right? Whether it's a shot, whether it's a pill, whether it's a Norplant, there's all kinds of things that can cause amenorrhea. What else that's not hormonal? Very nice. Pregnancy. That is normal. And what else? Stress can do it. And low body fat. Steroid hormones come from fat. Women that are anorexic or women that exercise excessively, especially distance runners and bodybuilders, if their fat levels get too low, they drop below a certain percentage of body fat, they usually stop having their period. See, if you stop having your period because you don't have enough body fat to produce the proper hormones, that means that you are having negative effects as well. We would tend to think, oh wow, a female college athlete, she's in great shape, and she gets the benefit of not having a period. But if you don't have a period, that means your estrogen and progesterone are too low to cause things to happen properly. You're not getting the proper rise and fall. That leads to decreased bone density and possibly other problems. A long time ago, they used to think, wow, that's awesome. They can exercise, they're in great shape, they don't have a period. Now they're starting to show that after years and years of that, it's not necessarily a good thing. Yeah, you know what? They tend to not like to talk about that. However, I think many of you know that women are not supposed to be on birth control long term. You guys know that? You know how many years during your whole reproductive years, how long are you supposed to be on hormonal replacement? Judith, do you know? Maximum of 7 and no more than 3 consecutively. Hey, guess what? A few years ago, they realized that hormone replacement therapy in menopausal women can cause strokes and heart attacks in a certain percentage. What is birth control? It's hormone replacement therapy in women that are not menopausal. You should understand that. Every medication, hey doc, you guys are going to be healthcare providers. You're going to be on the front line. And you have quite possibly, even those of you that already work in hospital environments, have quite possibly never heard of all of the side effects to hormone replacement therapy for women. I'm not telling you not to do it, but what I'm saying is knowledge is power. And it's very common. Most girls get on the pill. Around here, the percentages are real high. Did we ask yet how many people in this lab got pregnant when they were on the pill? Did we ask that the other night? Last week? Okay. I asked all my classes. I have had people in all the classes commonly do that. One class I had 7 girls that got pregnant on the pill. So it doesn't even always do what it's supposed to do. Better than nothing, yeah. But imagine you're using it right, you're told it's going to be totally effective, and then you wind up getting pregnant from that. And let us not forget, does the pill do anything for STDs? No, not a thing. Not a thing for STDs. So, let's do some more words. Menses is just your period. Menarche, your very first period. How old are girls when this happens? Well, let's ask. How many girls in here started their period over 16 years of age, your first period? So we'll just get that out of the way. Do you know, 50 years ago, it was quite common for some girls to start at 16. Okay? How many girls started at 16 in here? 15. We have no hands still. 14. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I was figuring nobody there. It's getting younger and younger and younger. We don't know all the whys, but some theories out there are hormones in the beef and the chicken. And when I brought that up today, someone in another class said, you know, my sister has never fed her kids anything but organic meat. And those girls were all teeny tiny little girls for the longest time before they grew up, and they all started their period at either 14 or 15 years old. That's one case. But we know if you eat foods that have those hormones, that some of them are in that meat, that you get it in there. Plastics secrete estrogens, estrogen-like compounds. When you see the film on your new car, you know, you get a new car, and you get a film on the glass, right? That's estrogen-like compounds. Carpet's made from plastics that secrete estrogen-like compounds. You get new carpet, you got that in the house. You have a new house, you got tons of those chemicals. They believe that it's possible that some of those chemicals get in and are leading to this. They also know that when you start to change how you think, the frontal lobe, the higher brain centers, they impact the subconscious stuff too. So exposure, early exposure, what you start to think about can kick that off earlier. Well, kids that are watching TV now, I mean, granted, kids have always been interested in stuff and curious, and that's the world. But there are things on TV that kids are exposed to at a much earlier age that when they watch shows like I was just talking about, it's now in their brain every day in front of them and visually stimulating, and it's not just a surprise and a mystery and something that they talk about every once in a while. It becomes a normal part of their day-to-day life that they're thinking about. And they think that that causes it to happen earlier. So one of the most dramatic studies that I've ever seen is they did a study on inner city kids. Okay? Commonly, this is the way that works. Commonly, white girls have their periods last. Hispanic girls in the middle, and black girls first. Why? We don't know why. That's just what it shows. Most commonly, that's the order. In inner cities, half of all African American girls have a period by the age of 8 years old. In inner cities. Odessa's not an inner city. Around here's not. It's different. When I read that, think about that. 8 years old, some at 7. Half by 8. That doesn't say just at 8. What's it like for a girl to start her period when she's in the single digits? Somebody in here knows firsthand, right? What's it like when you're 12 years old and you already have a D cup? And you go to the grocery store and grown-ups are checking you out. And they don't have a freaking clue that you're 12 years old. What does that do to the way that a little girl thinks? Okay? Or a girl that has to start wearing a bra at 8 or 9 and already has a period. So you guys are the health care providers. There's so much more to health care than what we commonly think about. You know, it's not all facts and it's not all medications, and so many things are tied together.